I was leaning back in my leather chair, the kind that seemed to mold perfectly to my body after years of late nights and impossible deadlines. The afternoon sun spilled across my office floor, warm and golden, catching the faint shimmer of my silk ivory blouse. Beyond the glass walls, Manhattan pulsed with its usual rhythm, taxis honking, pedestrians weaving, the occasional siren in the distance. My phone buzzed on the desk. A name flashed across the screen. Aunt Linda. I hadn't heard from her in months, maybe even a year. I let it ring once, twice, before curiosity got the better of me. Her voice, always high and dramatic, came through without a hello. "Emily, everyone's coming over to Mom's tonight. We need to talk." That "need to talk" was a phrase I'd heard before, the same one they used at that infamous family meeting years ago. The one where they told me I was useless. My stomach tightened, not from fear, but from the sting of the memory. I glanced at the stack of contracts on my desk, the fresh orchids my assistant, Chloe, had placed by the window, and the discreet silver plaque that read, Emily Carter, Chief Executive Officer. They still didn't know. Not the whole story. Not the truth. And tonight, I had a feeling they were about to find out. I was 23 the night it happened. The family meeting. It was held in my grandmother's living room in upstate New York, the one with the outdated floral wallpaper and the faint smell of cinnamon from decades of baking. Everyone was there. Aunt Linda with her oversized jewelry, Uncle Rick nursing a beer on the couch, my cousins whispering behind their hands. I'd just lost my job at a marketing firm in Boston. Downsizing, they called it. My plan was to regroup, maybe start freelancing, but before I could even explain, my father's voice cut through the chatter. "Emily," he said, "we've all been talking, and honestly, you're not pulling your weight." The words hit harder than I expected. "You're 23, Aunt Linda chimed in. "And still what? Figuring things out? You can't keep drifting. You're kind of useless right now." Useless. The word hung in the air, heavy, humiliating. My cheeks burned. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of my chair. My grandmother, bless her, was the only one who didn't join in. She was quiet for a long time before disappearing into her bedroom. When she came back, she placed a small, worn leather notebook into my hands. "This," she said, "was mine when I was your age. I wrote down every idea I had, every dream. Some were terrible. Some changed my life. Start writing, Emily. Your story isn't over yet." No one else said a word as I slipped the notebook into my purse. Something inside me shifted that night. I left the next morning before sunrise. No dramatic goodbyes, no explanations. Just a duffel bag, my grandmother's notebook, and the determination to make sure that one day, when they looked at me, the word useless would never cross their minds again. That was the night I decided I'd never sit in that living room again unless I was walking in on my own terms. New York City was loud, unrelenting, and expensive, but it was exactly what I needed. I rented a shoebox apartment in Queens with peeling paint, a leaky faucet, and a mattress on the floor. My grandmother's leather notebook sat on the nightstand, its pages gradually filling with business ideas scribbled between coffee stains and late-night thoughts. The first months were brutal. I worked 2 part-time jobs, answering phones at a law office during the day, waiting tables at night. In between, I devoured every free online course I could find about entrepreneurship, branding, and digital marketing. One rainy afternoon, while balancing a tray of cappuccinos, I overheard a man in a suit talking about needing a fresh, creative eye for a small clothing brand. Something in me sparked. I wiped my hands, walked over, and said, I could help with that. That man was David Morales, my first real client, and the person who became my earliest mentor. He didn't care that I didn't have a fancy office or a long list of credentials. He cared that I had ideas. And I had plenty. With his trust, I built his brand's online presence from scratch. I learned about ad campaigns, influencer collaborations, and supply chain quirks. The results were undeniable. Sales tripled in 6 months. Word spread. Quietly. I took on more clients. A bakery in Brooklyn, a small furniture store in Jersey, a struggling yoga studio in Manhattan. Each success was another page in my grandmother's notebook, Another small victory I never broadcasted to my family. There were nights I cried from exhaustion, nights I questioned whether it was worth it, and mornings I woke up with my laptop still open beside me. But then there were moments like signing my first five-figure contract that made every sleepless night worth it. By the time I was 28, I wasn't just freelancing anymore. I had a registered company, a tiny office in Soho, and my first full-time assistant, Chloe. I still posted generic updates online, a picture of coffee with the caption Monday grind or a sunset with blessed. My family never asked questions, and I never volunteered answers. Let them think I was still finding myself. What they didn't know was that my company had just landed a multi-million-dollar contract with a national fashion retailer. And that Emily Carter, the same girl they once labeled useless, was now CEO of a growing, respected marketing agency in the heart of New York City. I just wasn't ready to tell them. Not yet. The invitation, if you could even call it that, came in the form of a terse text from Aunt Linda. Dinner at Grandma's. 7 p.m. Everyone's coming. There was no please, no hope you can make it. Just an assumption that I'd show up. I hadn't been back to that house in 5 years. But something in me, maybe curiosity or maybe the desire to finally close the chapter, made me type back. I'll be there. I arrived in a black wrap dress, tailored but understated. My hair was pulled back in a low chignon, and I carried a small leather tote, the kind that cost more than they'd guess but looked simple enough to blend in. The moment I walked into the living room, conversation stalled. My father looked up from his chair. Aunt Linda's mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. We went through the motions, the how have you been, questions that didn't really want answers. Dinner was served, stories were told, but eventually the conversation took its familiar turn. You've been quiet on social media, Cousin Beth said, stabbing her salad. What are you even doing these days? I almost laughed. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. The Andersons are here for the 10 a.m. tomorrow. Should I confirm in the boardroom? I typed back quickly. Yes, and have the presentation ready. Aunt Linda glanced at my phone. Andersons? Who are they? I set my fork down, my heart strangely calm. They're one of our biggest clients. Clients? Uncle Rick scoffed. Don't tell me you've got some little side hustle going. I looked at my watch. Actually, I need to get going. Early morning. Then I turned to my grandmother. Would you like to come see where I work tomorrow? Bring everyone. We'll have coffee in my office. They all exchanged glances, curiosity, skepticism, maybe even amusement. The next morning, they arrived in 2 cars. Chloe met them in the lobby, her professional smile never wavering. Good morning, Mrs. Carter, she said to me as we stepped out of the elevator. The boardroom is set, and the Andersons confirmed for 10. Thank you, Chloe, I replied. My family followed me into the glass-walled corner office, my office. Sunlight streamed in from floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a glow over the polished marble floor. Framed awards lined one wall, along with photographs of campaigns I'd led. A vase of fresh orchids stood on my desk. There was a pause. A long, waited pause. What is this? My father asked slowly. This, I said, turning to face them, is Carter Creative, one of the fastest-growing marketing agencies in New York. And I'm the CEO. It was almost satisfying to watch the progression of emotions. First disbelief, then confusion, then the quiet, dawning realization of what those words meant. You? Aunt Linda whispered, as if the idea was absurd. Yes, I said, not unkindly. Me. The same girl you called useless. The one you thought couldn't make it without your advice or approval. Silence. The city hummed outside the glass, indifferent to the scene unfolding inside. I took a breath. You wanted to know what I've been doing? This. Building something that's mine. And I did it without a dime from anyone in this room. They stood there, staring, shame flickering in some eyes, awe in others. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the little girl defending herself at Grandma's table. I was standing on my own ground. I motioned for everyone to sit in the smaller conference area just off my office. The chairs were plush, the table sleek walnut, and a tray of coffee and pastry sat waiting, Chloe had thought of everything. My father was the first to speak. Emily, we had no idea. I know, I said simply, pouring myself a cup of coffee. And that was intentional. Aunt Linda gave a nervous laugh. Well, I mean, you've done really well for yourself. That's impressive. I set my cup down, leaning forward slightly. Let's be honest. None of you expected this. And now, some of you might be thinking I could help. Financially, professionally, maybe even personally. And I might. But only under certain conditions. Their expressions shifted. Curiosity mixed with discomfort. Condition 1. I began. Respect. No more dismissive comments about me or anyone else in this family. Words have power. If you want my support, you don't get to tear people down. Cousin Beth avoided my gaze. Condition 2. Accountability. If you come to me with a problem, I want to hear the truth. No excuses, no half-stories. If you need help, you have to own your part in it. Uncle Rick shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Condition 3. Self-improvement. I'll fund courses, training, even therapy if you're serious about change. But I won't hand out money for you to stay stuck in the same patterns. There was a long silence. The city skyline glimmered through the glass behind me, and I realized my voice didn't shake, not even once. This isn't about me lording success over you, I continued. It's about making sure no one in this family feels the way I did that night. I'm willing to help, but on terms that build something, not destroy it. My father's eyes softened. I can respect that. Aunt Linda nodded, though her face was a mix of pride and embarrassment. Chloe stepped in quietly. Emily, the Andersons are in reception. I smiled. Thank you. Could you show my family out? As they filed past, some gave small smiles, others quiet nods. For the first time, the balance of power had shifted. I wasn't the girl they had to fix, rescue, or criticize. I was the one setting the rules. A week later, I sat in the same leather chair in my office, the afternoon sun warming my shoulders. Chloe had just left for the day, and the building had that rare, peaceful quiet I loved. My phone buzzed. A text from Cousin Beth. Signed up for a graphic design course today. Thought you'd be proud. Another from Uncle Rick. Met with a financial advisor. Trying to get things on track. And then a short message from my father. I'm sorry. Truly. I was wrong about you. I let the phone rest in my hand for a moment, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and closure. Change didn't happen overnight, but the seeds were there, and I had planted them on my own terms. That evening, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my grandmother's old leather notebook. The edges were softer now, the pages filled with crossed-out ideas, sketches, goals, and the occasional frustrated scribble from sleepless nights. I flipped to the very first blank page. At the top, I wrote in neat, deliberate handwriting. Useless? Watch me. It wasn't bitterness. It was a promise. To myself, to the girl I was at 23, and to the woman I had become. I closed the notebook, placed it back in the drawer, and stood to watch the city lights flicker on one by one. For the first time in years, I thought about that living room with the floral wallpaper and cinnamon scent. I remembered the sting of their words, the way my grandmother's eyes told me she believed in me even when no one else did. She had been right. My story hadn't been over. It had barely begun. And now it was mine to tell.